Yo, this hot, this the spot, there it is, pod.com. We're interviewing the best comedians, so tune in quick and get your ears receiving them. We talking about life and life to stream right to you, from the microphone right to your home, dude. Side note, this might get embarrassing, but no, don't sweat, yo, cause there it is.
Welcome to the There It Is podcast, a comedy podcast to help you find your inspiration. I'm your host, Jason Farr. Let's do this. Thanks so much for joining us. We have a great episode for you today. It is with improviser and new instructor, David Richman. But first, just let's chat for a second. I feel like we never talk anymore. No, but my team, my sweethearts from the Magnet, are performing for the first time live on stage in well over a year now. Since March 11th was our last show in 2020 on stage. And we are coming back this Friday. And I have no idea if tickets are available, but you can go to magnettheater.com and find out. And I'm very excited about it, but I gotta be honest with you, it's a little nerve-wracking. All of this going on right now, I feel like this last 15, 16 months has really caught up with me. And getting back out in the world, like I have this feeling of, it's good to be back out. But then also there's an anxiety that comes with it. And I think there's an aftermath of anxiety and depression or something that's also coming with it. That's super weird that I don't know what that is. Does anyone else experience that? Are you experiencing that? Where this last 15 months is making it hard for you to just enjoy that things are back? I don't know what it is. It's strange, but it's what's going on with me. And I'm very happy that I'm going to be performing with my pals again and seeing all of them, or most of them are going to be at the show. So I'm very happy about that, but it's just, I guess there's like an ennui or something about what's also just dealing with everything that's happened. I don't know. It's weird. I don't want anyone else to be experiencing it, but I can't imagine I'm the only one experiencing this weirdness. I've got no answers. But if you have some, please share them with us. You can email us. You can go to thereitispod.com and contact us. Well, let's get on to today's episode. I had a really great chat with David Richman. He is in the Baltimore area. You've probably seen him at Big. You've seen him at Bird City. Maybe seen him at Wit, and he's great. And we had a really interesting chat about what even made him want to get into improv. I thought that was a very interesting in on that. And we also talk about him being on the spectrum and how that relates to how he does improv and how improv impacts him. It's a very great, thoughtful conversation. I can't wait for you to hear it. Here's my chat with David Richman. So you're in Baltimore now, but where are you originally from?
Well, I grew up in the Gaithersburg, Germantown area of Maryland. It's about 45 minutes northwest of downtown DC, 50 minutes maybe. It's suburbs, exurbs. When I was younger, it was less built up, but yeah, now it's gotten developed because DC has just grown so much. But I was, when I started in improv, I was finishing up my last semester at University of Maryland, College Park as an English major, and I did a lot with broadcasting. And I also was living with my family in like Gaithersburg area. I don't know if you've been there. It's not that exciting.
I have not been to Gaithersburg. I've heard of it.
Oh, really?
I think so. I have some family in that area, and I think recently when we were driving back up to New York from South Carolina, and we wanted to stop in some fun places, and I was just kind of looking at Virginia and Maryland, and I think I saw maybe something about it then.
Have you heard of Dogfish Head Ale House, or the or the ale.
Head, Dogfish Head is my favorite brewery.
Well, it's come to Gaithersburg. We'll get a beer sometime because it's right near my parents.
Okay.
It's like
maybe
biking
that's
distance.
why I've heard of it, because
and there's one in Rehoboth.
Okay.
I've been to both.
There's someone who's like,
I don't even drink, but I just like
camaraderie. Oh yeah. Someone who's like my little sister worked at Dogfish Head, so
cool.
That might be why I've heard of it, that town. Well, cool, very cool. So you started doing improv in 2004 because
14.
That's what
I'm not that.
Say.
That would make me so much better.
No, I actually
then I'd be
knew
like
it was
deserving.
2004. I was even looking at 2014. And did you ever sometimes when you're looking at a word and you process it differently and you say the wrong thing? That's what I just did.
I started about 7.5 years ago ish. A little over 7.25. So I started in February of 2014 at Washington Improv Theater. I'm actually I went to WIT's opening night because DC and Baltimore are close, and I like being part of both scenes. So I went to their opening night. It was like seriously the most positive, fun experience I've had in like a year and a half of life. I was gonna say of improv, but honestly of life. I'm going to Big and WIT tonight after this.
Cool.
For jams. I try to just keep. I'm like I'm not totally done with Zoomprov, but if I can prioritize in person at this point, I'm kind of ready.
Yeah, no, I got there a month or so ago where I loved seeing my teammates, but I was very tired of the lack of what you can do. It was a very limiting platform for doing improv for me because I just like to use my body too much. Even if it's just how I'm expressing something. I'm not like this big character person, but when I perform improv, but I like being on a stage to perform.
I will say Zoomprov is good for me for a lot of the pandemic with where my energy level was. I've in the past month or two, I've like built up stamina for some reason. For a variety of reasons. I think readjusting to seeing people again / maybe losing weight. I don't know. I'm still kind of big. But just in general, I feel more energy. So I'm kind of ready for in person in a way that I maybe wasn't like 3 months ago.
Right. Oh, yeah. Oh, I mean, it's a weird time that I'm not going to fully be able to process for a little bit because while I've wanted to get back into the swing of things, I also know how slow that needs to go for me because I don't need to go back to like doing stuff most nights a week. Like 3 nights a week is kind of my max and I'm zonked of energy. But I was wondering about your starting improv because you said in another podcast that you did it because you were working on a podcast.
I appreciate you listening.
Oh, for sure.
Yes, I was doing broadcasting stuff, and I wanted to be better on the air and like better at improvising in that context.
On that, you were saying that you were doing a podcast. I was like, was it like a comedy Bang Bang style podcast where you were doing comedy, or is it just?
It was really weird comedy.
Okay.
I don't even know if it's still online. It was called Ezekiel Von Podcast. To call it like comedy Bang Bang is an insult to comedy Bang Bang, but it was like really weird, absurd bits without a lot of comedy training experience, just like being a comedy fan.
First of all, we're going to be taking callers.
Just start calling whenever. I mean,
whenever.
We'll put you on hold if we're in the middle of something.
Yeah, we have a lot of fans, so understand it's going to take a while to get you on the air, if you are able to get on the air. And I think that in doing so, well, okay, I got nothing for that one. Right, give me a second.
Abandon the bit.
But then I started taking classes, and hopefully I got better on we didn't do too many episodes, to be honest. And now it's not around anymore. But
what else did you want to get from doing improv for your broadcasting?
I felt like I was a connoisseur, an appreciator of things that I couldn't necessarily contribute to greatly. For example, as you may have heard, I'm a big music nerd.
Yeah,
but I don't make it myself. I can sing actually, and that works for musical improv, but I don't play an instrument at this time. And I can like listen to music and be a gigantic dork about it. And when I say like, that was my first Ask Me passion, like, and it still is pretty bad. I told you I was on vacation recently, and I was in New England, and I got 50 CDs, and my dad kind of said that's overspending. But they're all in my car because I drive a lot, especially driving to Baltimore and DC. Well, I'm in Baltimore, but I drive around a lot, so it actually kind of works. I have a lot of driving time, so I think I'll get to listen to all of them. I'm not just buying them just to have them and like never listen.
Right.
I would be more like that with books, but I do everything else digitally.
Everyone's like that with books.
I'm pretty minimalist. My room looks like boring shit. I just with CDs in my car, it's just something I can do. I also do Spotify and stuff, but
I prefer the physical CDs as well. I like having physical copies.
It depends.
If I want the album, then I want a physical thing. I don't want to download an album.
My parents have a record player, but I don't live with them. So I have, for example, I got Elvis. Are you a music fan?
I love music, and you mentioned in that podcast that you listen to U2 a lot.
I listen to Elvis Costello and XTC, and I got their stuff.
Oh yeah.
On I already had Elvis and XTC on record and tape, but I don't have a personal record and tape player, so I needed it on CD. And these are like nostalgic albums, but mostly I got stuff I hadn't really heard before. But yeah, basically, I felt like I was an appreciator of comedy podcasts and alternative comedy, and like I would watch Mr. Show over and over again. So like writery comedic mind was in there somewhere.
So when it comes to, because I was in radio for a bit, and
yeah, you have the voice.
Thanks.
I can spot you guys. I can spot us guys, but I'm not really doing it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not in radio anymore. I do this podcast. But I do want to talk about how improv maybe benefited your broadcasting at that time. Was it to like be quick on your feet, to sort of accept ideas?
Yeah, actually, there was a point where I was doing my radio show where I really wanted to, and I think this coincided with me partially. I used to do the old play obscure music I love to people and just talk about tracks. But then I got this hunger to interview artists in the area, a couple people from out of the area, all different types of artists. Everybody from musicians and actors to balloon artists, for example.
Yeah.
And essentially, it was like I just wanted to be better at talking for a longer time because I wasn't really. I had a lot of music playing in my early shows, and I realized I wanted to like explore actually not just curating. I mean, I did still curate a playlist on the show, but I tried to also talk for an extended period. And it was a really fun learning experience. And I've done some podcasts since as well in the past couple of years. So I've tried to keep that going. Right now, I'm kind of not, I mean, outside of guesting on them sometimes, I don't have my own podcast at the moment. I feel pretty comfortable doing one at this point. I would say, though, my skills are more in being on the air than the tech side. So I'm sort of useless as like starting my own thing because I need the tech help. I'll talk, give me the mic, and I'll not shut up. But beyond that, I'm kind of useless.
A couple minutes ago, you used the term Aspie passion.
Yes,
is that
I did.
Reference to Asperger's?
It's a colloquial, yes.
Okay.
And I should stop using it because it's a colloquialism that not everyone knows. So, yeah, one reason I talked about coming on was because I feel like, for one, there aren't a ton of us a ton of people on the autistic spectrum doing improv, but our perspective is not really heard a lot on how we play and how we learn, and also how some of the challenges, I would say, can affect us getting involved in improv and the community that surrounds it. I've had to really work on a lot to get where, I'm not saying I'm like top shit or anything by any means, but to get where I am today with teaching and being an active part of both scenes, I've had to like really work hard at consciously at stuff. And to get, I think I'm pretty proud of where I'm at improv wise now. I wasn't always, but there's plenty of things I had to think more about than other people.
Yeah, I mean, it's the whole fact that it's referred to as a spectrum shows that there are different places people can be, and there's a lot of different perspectives within that spectrum.
Yes. Obviously, the term is confusing now, and the DSM-4 changed it. Technically, Asperger's doesn't exist right now, but I was thinking about it. I think it's good to differentiate between different types, because someone with really low functioning autism probably wouldn't be able to do improv for whatever reason. Whereas I think generally higher functioning people can. And I don't even, that high functioning, low functioning dichotomy is honestly weird for me, because there's some areas where I can excel and others where I still struggle a lot.
That's an interesting perspective. And there are a few different angles to talk about with that. I mean, obviously, there are things that everyone will have to focus on more than maybe other people would, but that means something different for you. I would say.
I also wonder if my improv started off a certain way and has evolved, because I started off hyper watching sketches and getting very game oriented just naturally. And I think that's the way my brain works.
Right.
But now I feel like I'm pliable and can play with whoever and do whatever. But I felt like I'm unlike most people. I actually started off more gamey and am now more whatever. Like, let's do it. I don't care. I just want to play.
And that was one of the things I was wondering about, because you were referring to doing improv so that you could talk for longer in your broadcast work. And I was wondering if you felt that maybe because of your being on the spectrum, that was maybe why you weren't talking more.
No
stuff you were doing.
I'm not that's kind of and I'm not knocking you. This is just general. I'm not, there's so many different types of ways of being on the spectrum. I've actually always been very extroverted and gregarious.
Okay.
My thing is, if anything, I feed off people's energy more than normal. I'm atypical. I'm not like a mousy science, tech, math.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Rain Man has really made a lot of people think that that's all that autism is, and that is so not accurate, you know? Like, that's...
I mean, can I tip pretty easily? Yes, but that's just a bonus. I'm not even... I actually struggled with math growing up, so that's kind of funny.
So when you talk about how you have become pliable with your improv, and you're wondering how much how your improv has grown in regards to your autism, what have you noticed that's maybe benefited your life or benefited your improv in regards to being on the spectrum?
Well, for one, I think one thing that makes me a good teacher right now, starting out at least, is that I've actually struggled a lot. I didn't come in with natural theater skills or any of that shit. Like, I sometimes see people that are naturally have it very early, and I'm like, that's great, but I don't relate to that. I feel like I've had to work on all the performing aspect a lot, and I think I'm good now, but I think it's been like a pretty long trip. But when I teach and I'm telling people to not just do talking head scenes, I'm not like judging because that was my beginning of improv.
That's so many people at their beginning of improv are just talking head scenes.
And I'm sure I still occasionally do it. I don't think I'm perfect.
For sure, we all do.
Especially on Zoom, we're all kind of doing it to a degree.
Oh gosh, I mean, I'm wondering how much my first stage show is going to be doing improv is going to be July 2nd, and I'm curious how that's going to play. I'm curious if that's going to be if I'm going to be like still for longer than I normally would have been. Or if I'm going to go and just blow up in some way that I never would before,
I will say I have one difficulty. I developed plantar fasciitis in my foot over the pandemic. So I'm trying to work on getting that better. So I'm probably being overly physical than I should be for what I have, but I'm not a football tackle at the moment. I'm off the field. The Dallas Cowboys aren't going to take me. So.
I know from what you were saying in a couple of places, there's a couple of places I've read that you fell in love with improv, and you alluded to that when you saw that first show at the Wit. And
it wasn't actually, the show was amazing, but the jam afterwards blew my mind
really
because.
Okay. How so?
Because first of all, I grew up 45. Just a general background. I grew up in the exurbs of DC. So that seems cool, but it's not actually DC. Mm-hmm. If you're from there, you're like, oh yeah, DC is just like the capital of the US, whatever. But it really is an awesome, vibrant town with a lot of cultural diversity. And it's a city. Actually, Baltimore is even more of a sea change from DC if you're coming from where I grew up. Like, it's more of a shock to the system. Not in a bad way, but you learn some street smarts just living in Baltimore. Even compared to the part of DC Wit is in. Have you been to DC itself?
Yes. I haven't been to Wit. I haven't seen any of the comedy scene.
Okay, but if you've been to Northwest DC, a lot of it is pretty well off. It's kind of, there's a bit of segregation. I'm not going to bullshit you. But the thing I liked about, and I don't know what this person's deal was, but on the night of the jam after the show, it was a show followed by where Herald team performers would jam with anyone from the audience, and it was awesome. And someone, I don't know if he was homeless or not, but someone seemingly maybe from a rougher background played in, probably had no improv experience, and made some big choices. And what I liked was the more experienced improvisers that were there, like, fucking loved it. They just wanted to support this person. And I thought that was really cool because that taught me, like, if you're at that really good level, you kind of want to play with more danger and or a little looser in general, and can handle a degree of crazy.
And so that you said that blew your mind
at the time, yeah.
Yeah, and so that was what most
that just started me coming back and starting to take classes.
Wow, that's very cool.
My parents paid for a while.
Yeah,
I'm a late bloomer in the adulting department.
Oh wow!
I graduated college at 27. I'm 34 now. I'm behind.
I find that very interesting that, someone who wasn't, both people, there were people who were involved with the theater and someone who was not a member of the theater is what inspired you to take classes, to start that journey. That's really cool. And you mentioned in an interview that I looked up that you feel that improv can bring people together, and that's a perfect example of that.
Wow, you did your research.
I try.
Yeah, I definitely think it can. I mean, I do think if you're like a total asshole, improv's not for you, but
yeah, for sure.
I mean, I'm not going to say that everyone can be good no matter what. It takes a certain amount of acceptance and ability to listen. I mean, you can learn listening, but you need to be accepting of other people's ideas that come from different perspectives. For sure.
Yeah.
I think it's more about positive personality traits than it is about being naturally funny. Because I think I started off very naturally funny, and I don't think that necessarily made me a great improviser. I think learning the actual craft and growing as a human being helped me get solid.
That's beautiful. I've heard there was some thing that someone shared online that was saying traits of a good improviser, and there were things like listening and acceptance and being a team player, and they mentioned a few others, and they said these are also the traits of being a good person.
Yeah, mostly. I think there are a couple people that can compartmentalize and be total assholes and still be good at it.
Oh, for sure. And there are a ton of assholes who are rich and famous now, thanks to improv, thanks to their coming up through improv. But sure, yes. I think the point was try to have these traits, whether you're on stage or off stage. Try to have these traits because these are traits of a good person as well as a good improviser.
And I struggled with personality stuff when I was starting. Like, I had to get disciplined in my second class for playing like an asshole. Supposedly I was bringing my offstage issues into scenes. And like, my teacher was honest to me about that. Her name is Melanie Gart, and I always like thank her all the time because it like stopped me from, no matter how I was feeling off stage, to just be a good person. I wasn't like a total monster, but I was unintentionally being difficult and
like just denying or steamrolling.
It was, I think, steamrolling and endowing in a shitty way.
Oh, okay.
But it was a mix of things. I was going through stuff at the time, and I think that was part of it. But in my early improv journey, like for example, I didn't pass on in a class because I was struggling with certain things. And then I took the class again under a different teacher. And it was hugely beneficial to me. At the time, it hurt. Because when I obsess with something, I hyper obsess. To like hyper obsess with something and in a way fail at something or feel like you fail at something is tough. But ultimately in the long run, it helps me. And like the teacher that failed me, I used her as a coach later on because like, well, she's not going to bullshit me.
How did you cope through that because it's I think very common if somebody is wanting to be really good at something, it could be any skill. If they love it, they're super passionate about it, but then they're either struggling to do it well or having a failure that is hard to cope with. How did you work through that so that you could continue to do this thing you loved? Because a lot of people give up.
Yeah. I started studying different perspectives to help me with my weak points to see if it would help. In addition, and I just committed more to learning more about it. And I was like, okay, maybe I have to work a little harder than some people, but fuck it.
Interesting. What sort of things what other perspectives were you trying to
like I took some classes in another theater called Dojo Comedy, and it, at the time, for the way my brain worked, unlocked my ability to activate character deals in game in a way that I didn't have before from playing different perspectives, I guess. And knowing why I'm doing something and what will I do about this thing that I'm doing. So making an active choice. And in addition to retaking the class first of all, when you take classes at WIT, like, even though there is a general curriculum, teachers often improvise off of it to a degree. So you could have the same level with one teacher and have a different teacher, and it could be rather different. Just a different approach.
Right.
So I retook the class with the general manager of the company, the creative director, I guess, Mark Chalfant. Do you know that name?
I don't think so.
Okay, he runs WIT.
Oh, okay. Then I've probably heard it.
Yeah, I did see that we have some mutual DC expats / DC people.
Yeah. Yeah,
and Thomas
at a festival.
Thomas Dostry, who's like a sweetheart.
Yeah, I met a bunch of people at a festival that was in North Carolina who were people from DC, from the DC area, and I've probably met some at a couple of other festivals too.
Yeah, Jordana and Macy.
Right, and I met them at the festival in North Carolina.
Do you know Xavier? Great. He's hilarious.
Yeah, he's up here.
Yeah, I know. He's my Herald teacher.
Oh, that's dope. He is wonderful. He coached my indie team for a bit, and we.
Oh God,
he's a good friend.
Yeah, he wants me to lead a workshop at his theater that he's starting up slowly. I think they're figuring stuff out. I assume it would be virtual, but maybe not. I don't know.
People are still figuring out a lot of how to move forward. You have bounced around in a great way, not in a bad way. A bunch of theaters there. I mean, there's WIT you mentioned. There's Big. You mentioned Dojo Comedy. And now you're at Bird City. But you still perform at various places now, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I'm technically still a Big house team performer. That theater is just figuring out how to keep the people. There was a bit of a rift, I'm sure some people know. But
some things,
long story short, Big is rebuilding to a degree. So some people are gone. So the house team program will rebuild, I assume, and restructure. And I will be placed somewhere, but I have no idea where. I have no idea what night. I don't know. I plan on auditioning for WIT and trying to do that as well. And I'm sort of figuring out, in addition, and I also recently talked about leading workshops at WIT, so hopefully I can do stuff for them.
Yeah.
I don't know. I do want to stay in this general region, but depending on where exactly in the area I get a job, I don't know if I'll be living in Baltimore or DC within the next year. Right now I'm in Baltimore. I like it a lot. I think I want to stay for now, but if I got hyper involved with WIT, maybe I got like a job there, then I would be open to moving to DC, assuming I could afford the rent. It's very high.
Rent, it's too damn high.
Yes.
Baltimore's a lot cheaper.
Yeah. But, all great theaters that you're involved with there, that area of the country has a lot of great comedy going on.
Yes, and there's a new one in Baltimore called Highwire that's virtual right now and has been doing 7 nights of shows a week and virtually, and they're trying to become in person slowly. But it's really cool, and there are a lot of big expats that didn't like how things were, so they started a new theater, and they're great too. And I hope to do stuff with them as much as I can. But yeah, like there is a lot going on, so I haven't felt this big incentive. I mean, first of all, I don't feel like I've accomplished enough here to move, but I haven't felt yet this big incentive to go to New York, LA, or Chicago. I expect one day I may, but everything's kind of restarting up in all these cities, so it's not like I have a particularly disadvantage here.
Right, and honestly, being able to have access to the different theaters that you have there is, there's not much more to gain.
Yeah, it's cool that Baltimore and DC are relatively close to each other. And New York has a lot too, but
yeah. And of course a lot is changing here, and I just don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know if UCB is going to come back, and I don't know what Squirrel's really going to look like. And and then there's also like the Tank they have shows that go on there, and there's a lot outside of UCB, Magnet, and Pitt. So there's a great scene here too, but I just don't know what it's going to look like.
Yeah, I have no idea what's happening really.
So
where I'm at,
we're all figuring it out right now. It's an interesting place to be.
Oh, this might be worth mentioning. I don't know if and how, I don't know when, but I'm in talks to do stuff for a London theater virtually called The Nursery.
Yeah, like stuff like what?
TAing and eventual teaching.
Awesome.
And hypothetically, if I could perform virtually, that'd be cool. I don't know where they are with virtual versus in-person stuff. In person would be rough because I live in a different country and
right.
It's kind of a long drive and an impossible drive too.
You get a big enough boat where you can just like drive
I just need a boat
the whole way.
Yeah.
It's the only way to make it work.
Are you on a team at Magnet, if I may ask?
I am. Yeah, I'm on Sweetheart.
Is that a house team?
Yeah, we call them megawatt teams. Well, I mean, we call them house teams, but megawatt. There's musical megawatt on Tuesday nights and megawatt on Wednesday nights, and those are the house teams, the musical and non-musical house teams. And
cool.
I've been on it. I mean, this last year has made it hard to remember the actual amount of time, but it's been a couple years. It's been like 2.5 years, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm going to a musical improv jam tomorrow.
Yeah.
I am very excited.
Musical improv is amazing. It really is something because it's all the fun that improv has, and then there's this extra surprise of how they musically figure things out.
Yeah, have you heard of Travis Plager and iMusical?
I don't think so.
Oh, iMusical is like the premier musical improv troupe at both WIT and I would say in DC.
Oh, I have seen that written, but I don't know.
I took both of his classes level 1 and I auditioned and got into level 2. And it was like one of the most fun and educational improv experiences I've ever had.
That's great.
I'm a little out of musical practice because it is a certain song form that I need to like get in my brain again. But
yeah,
I hope it will come back naturally tomorrow, but I don't actually know.
Yeah.
First course first.
You mentioned that you're getting into teaching and things that you were trying to express to your students. What are some of the improv principles that you like to highlight to them the most?
So my class is basically an advanced 2-person scene class.
Okay.
So really listening and supporting each other and being on the same page is major. But also, if you're pulling from something like a monologue or material of any sort, play with some degree of danger and abandon and sort of don't always make the most obvious choice. I mean, sometimes an obvious choice can be great depending on what you're pulling, but it's okay to go from a tangent that really makes you have a thought. And also try to stay in the present and don't talk too much about the past or the future, which is like hard for everyone. Like normally when I'm playing and that happens, I'll be like, let's just do that because otherwise we're just talking about stuff, which then people will just want to see what you're talking about. Guess I've only done the first 3 classes, so I'm still like figuring out what my style of teaching is, what my philosophy is. I think it's pretty wide ranging.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of diving in the deep end because I'm learning virtual teaching through Zoom and I'm teaching people from all over the world. So one note I got of constructive feedback from Tavish this past week was I get a little too jargony and I use too much jargon that's from DC and Baltimore area, which doesn't always translate. So I'm learning to try to talk more universally about things so they're understandable. And that was a really helpful piece of feedback. In a way, when I start teaching in DC and Baltimore in person, using their jargon will be okay. But if I'm doing virtual with people around the world, it helps to be accessible.
Right. That makes sense. That's very cool. It's a cool place to be in your improv journey and your teaching journey. What made you want to start teaching?
A lot of stuff. For one, improv has benefited me so much in my mental and even physical and all forms of health, and is my number one passion. So I wanted to give back to a community, but also partially, I think it's a skill I've developed I think improv is a skill I've developed by working really hard on, and I wanted to contribute to it in a way, and help facilitate it for other people. And it's essentially making money off of teaching people how to play like children in a sense. So that's kind of a cool idea. And I'm also naturally better at creative stuff. So I think it's a better fit for me than I don't know what my job will be. I don't know how how I will make full-time money in 3 to 6 months from now, but I hope teaching is a part of it. If it's all of it, great. We'll see. I can't predict. I think in some ways I have certain issues that make it hard for me to do stuff that requires a lot of executive functioning skills. So naturally, that's not to say there is none in teaching. There is some, but it's applied towards something that I'm deeply familiar with. So it helps. It's kind of what I can do.
Yeah.
I'm out of options, so I got to do something.
Right, I hear you. We were talking earlier about how your perspective, being someone on the spectrum, relates to your improv, and we're hearing a lot now about the importance of inclusion.
Yes,
and that conversation has gotten better because now people are starting to include people beyond just talk of race.
I'm going to be blunt with you, though. I think it's getting better recently, and I think it has a long way to go with neurodiversity.
Exactly.
Unfortunately,
and that's what I was going to get at with how when you're teaching and you're trying to help guide people, some of that is going to be at some time if somebody says something that's exclusionary.
Oh yeah.
How does your perspective play into guiding others about being inclusive?
Well,
and you kind of touched on it with how much more there has to go when it comes to.
I have not confronted because I've only been teaching for a short time. I haven't confronted every possible scenario.
Right.
So I have had to discipline a student for breaking a rule or for kind of doing something that was not okay in class, which is a walk-on in a 2-person scene class. But they weren't being hateful or anything like that. So I have not, thankfully, had to deal with saying, hey, that's not okay to say that. When I do, I'll know. I don't really know how I'll deal with that yet because I haven't confronted it. I may not deal with it as well as I would like because it's something I haven't had to do yet.
Right.
I need to build reps in teaching still.
For sure. Yeah, I get that. You mentioned neurodiversity. What are your thoughts on the neurodiversity movement?
For improv, I am, and I've been trying to push this in DC. There's been panels that I've helped contributed to it. I think if you're gonna cast diversity-wise, you should consider neurological differences if people are open about those. Obviously, you shouldn't force people to reveal, but if people are on the spectrum or have something else that makes their brain work differently, how is that not diversity? It's literally thinking differently than other people. And that's not to say it'll always be great, but it is diversity, just in my opinion, just as much as any other type of diversity. And I realize it's kind of a hot thing to say because it's not a contest. There's all different types of diversity.
Right.
And I will say that when I was starting out, I definitely got more stigmatized in DC. And now I'm fine. I feel good where I am. But that's because I've had to work through things. And I've also had to get good. Eventually, if you're on the spectrum, in my opinion, and you're doing improv, you have to be really good to kind of compensate for whatever social skills you have issues with. In general. I do find that things are much better now than they were 5-7 years ago. And that's not to say that there isn't anything I've done wrong. There absolutely has been, and there's stuff I need to work on to accommodate other people. But as a whole, that's a belief I have that few theaters are truly implementing. But I do think that some are sort of keeping it in the back of their mind. I think that's a big improvement. Mm-hmm. When I was cast at Big, Baltimore Improv Group in early 2018, that changed my improv life for the better. And even though they have other big issues, if I'm not gonna lie, Big was at the time with the Withers very inclusive regarding neurodiversity. Not as much in a way where they were consciously thinking of doing it, but in a way where they wouldn't not cast someone if they had a difference that maybe some people didn't vibe with. And in DC, that was harder to come by. I think stuff is generally getting better. I mean, I don't think I'd be considered to eventually teach at WIT if it wasn't, because that's facilitating for other people. So that feels good. But there's a lot of people that get discouraged from doing improv that are on the spectrum or of other neurological issues. And I'll be honest, my experience is more on the spectrum. I have some other stuff, but that's what I know most from being stigmatized about. I cannot as much speak to other stuff because that's my like highlight.
Yeah.
I'm on the autism spectrum. I do executive functioning and bipolar stuff too, but it's not the starring show.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah.
And I feel like, I think for like diversity scholarships, if someone possibly has a mental health or difference, they should always be able to get scholarships because it could affect income, because generally it's easier to find steady work if you're, I mean, as a whole, if you're neurotypical. Those are my main opinions about diversity. And I think some theaters are getting better about it.
Yeah.
Big was very good to me about that for a while, and I appreciate that. I'd like to see more theaters doing that. I mean, I will say that sometimes it's just an issue of like theaters are struggling right now, and it's hard to give anyone a scholarship. And that's
for sure, yeah.
I understand that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you have the means to.
Right. Oh, yes. And being open to different types of groups that don't have a voice. I mean, that is when people talk about diversity and inclusion, the primary thing is it's not just somebody being there and then that's it. It's that they can share their perspective there. And so any perspective should really be a part of diversity. And
also, it's not just good to have students taking classes that are disabled, but have performers on stage on House and Herald teams or whatever special project that have different perspectives. Because they bring something unique. Exactly. And I realize it could sound sour grapesy because of my own shit, but I genuinely believe that in general, that if you have different brain wiring, you have difference. I mean,
right.
I will say that some good things about my disability and affecting improv, they do exist. I've had difficulties in the past. But one thing that I'm good at is cutting through the shit in a scene. Okay. And like something needs to happen, or like things aren't moving, or something is being coy, I'll just fucking say it. And I think that's something I bring that's unique, because I'm not going to dance around something. And part of that is I've grown in confidence, but I do think that's possibly related to my autism, is I'm blunt and direct. It's not good in every aspect of life.
Well, this has been a beautiful talk. We are now at the end of the episode.
Oh, okay.
To create something together.
I'll do improv with you. That's all I got.
Well, let's do it. Let's do like a 3-minute scene. What's something that can inspire the scene?
A word or a location is fine. Yeah. If you have one. I'm bad at coming up with them. Mine are all food, always. Food and war. And that's it. And those aren't good.
Open up.
There's a site called Can I Get A?
I've used it. But
doesn't always help, but I appreciate the effort.
How about a tropical storm?
Okay.
Man, it's a wet one, huh?
I'm all wet. This feels awful. We gotta go inside.
Yeah, we do, but I know that there's a bad storm coming, and I know all the alerts are saying seek being inside. I get that. But isn't it more fun to be out here?
No, I really like being inside and, being in a warm place, not getting wet all the time, personally. But look, I know we're dating and you have your preferences and like,
let's have an adventure.
No, I like adventures. Like if we were inside a car driving with the windshield wipers on, that's nice.
Right.
Or in a coffee shop.
You did go tornado chasing with me, which I appreciate. And it was your car, and it got very damaged, and I'm still going to pay that off. Don't worry.
You better.
But look, there's nothing to get damaged here. We're just outside. It's pouring down rain. It's not going to stop. There's going to be flooding. And isn't that, like, part of it?
Look, I just don't find this very romantic. Why don't we go into a restaurant and eat something?
I mean, they closed.
That's true. We could go to her house and eat something.
Oh, but okay. Let's meet in the middle. Let's make this romantic. We could make a fire. No, because of the flooding.
There's a lot of things we can't do right now.
Right. I'm racking my brain here and how to make.
Also, my phone is soaking wet. I think my phone is done.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I lost my shoes back there. But that's it. We're walking barefoot. Isn't that romantic?
If it was not raining and we were prancing together through a field, maybe that would be.
Okay. I can't stop the rain, but maybe we can find a field to prance in.
If you weren't so fucking hot, I wouldn't want to do that.
I've been told that before.
God damn it.
Oh, yes. This just reminds me of college.
You prance?
No, the storm. I'm from Florida, and there's a lot of storm. It's hurricane season, just about all the time in the Gulf. And I love it. I love it. I think that's why I'm so into this, and I just appreciate you taking the time to engage.
This kind of reminds me of the time it flooded in Maryland and my car kind of moved away from the house because it was like being lifted up by the water.
Oh, wow. Is that the one that got damaged in the tornado?
Yeah.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, it's not a good memory.
Oh, there's some food floating here. Do you want to just eat that? It looks like someone was having a picnic.
God, you're so hot. Fine.
There it is.
Sorry, I have like no energy.
No, man, it's improv.
We're not supposed to have energy.
Thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Very glad to have him. Hope you enjoyed that conversation. And be sure to catch David at Baltimore Improv Group or Highwire, Washington Improv Theater, or Bird City. And he also will be doing some virtual shows, so check those out. If you happen to see his name on something, be sure to check that out. And we'll have some ats for those theaters in the description. And also, be sure to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at There It Is Pod, and our YouTube at There It Is. Also subscribe to our comedy lifestyle newsletter and support us if you can. We have a Patreon and a PayPal. Go to thereitispod.com for newsletter and support info. Until next time, be good to each other.
The music for the theme song was created by Neil Brooks. The rap was written and performed by Nick Acevedo. The logo for There It Is was created by Jeff Prater. The There It Is podcast is produced by Jason Farr.